r/AskReddit. What's something you did that seemed harmless at the time, but actually proved to be extremely dangerous? When I was around 12 years old, I went for a hike with a friend. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, and my parents thought we were playing in the backyard. Well, our hike took us through the forest to a frozen river which we decided to walk across. Since it was spring, the ice wasn't as thick as we thought it was, and I ended falling through. My friend quickly grabbed me and pulled me backwards out of the water. The water was flowing surprisingly fast, and I remember at the time thinking how lucky I was that he was there to catch me. That was over 25 years ago, and I still have flashbacks to that and think, what if nobody knew where we were, and if he didn't catch me, I could have easily been swept under the ice. I replaced my garage door spring before eating. That they're hella dangerous. Ignorance is bliss, unless it kills you and leaves behind a mangled corpse. Mixing bleach and vinegar with hot water to mop the floors, then getting really lightheaded, so I would sit near the bucket of chemical warfare I had created. Exploring a natural cave on private land without the proper equipment, knowledge, or guidance. Night before Easter in 1973, and 4 friends and I decide to go into a cave we had heard about in southern Illinois. After dropping a few White Cross, we each had a cheap flashlight and wore boots, but that's about it. 3 of the friends were brothers and fought the entire time. At one point physically, we did okay going in avoiding the water by traversing along rocks, but after about 3 hours the lights started going out. After turning around, we made it about halfway and decided it would be faster to just slog through the shallow stream that ran the length of the cave. At some point one of my boots disintegrated, so I was basically barefoot for over an hour walking out. We made it out just as the sun was coming up with one working flashlight. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face when I walked into the house that morning covered in mud from head to toe. The amount of random unidentified pills I took in my 20s. I recall finding a bag of pills in the floor at a rave and being so excited to try them. There was 4 of us, and we just dived in and had one each without a care in the world. Maybe it was due to no adulterated pills back then. No fentanyl, no opioids. The worst that could happen in my opinion back then was that they were duds and did nothing. There's no way I would do that now. I joined a crowd that surged and overwhelmed the entrances to a Rolling Stones general admission show in 1979. A few weeks later, the tragedy at the Who show in Cincinnati occurred. While in New Orleans, I got in a car I thought was my Uber but wasn't. Ended up getting driven and round and eventually robbed at a gas station by the people who were my Uber. Luckily they only stole my phone and debit card, but easily could have been taken somewhere and the shit kicked out of me or worse. Also extremely lucky I got about 90% of the $6,000 they pulled from my account / Venmoing themselves. Pre-internet, in the prior century, I wanted to beat a snowstorm while on a cross-country drive. Weather started out as nothing special, turned into a blizzard with whiteout conditions. I couldn't see the freeway surface, then I couldn't see in front of the car. I was behind an empty logging truck. It had poles sticking up in the air that I could see. The truck kept going, and I stayed on his ass for the next hour and a half until I could see the road surface again. White knuckle driving. Really young, stupid judgment on my part. This was in a very isolated area on the Washington/Idaho border at my stepmother's cabin. Pendo Real River. Was outside walking about and saw a massive moose likely 50 yards from me coming through deep brush. Moved in to get a much closer look. It was a female and her calf, foal, then came into sight behind her as I got closer. Luckily she really paid me not much attention and continued on towards the riverbank. I later found out how absolutely stupid that was and how fast I could have been a target. Edit to at, since this comment has gotten so many upvotes I thought I would add a bit more context. I grew up camping and fishing in the Pacific Northwest and was always raised to be wary of predators, especially when salmon fishing or hiking at high altitude. I just had never come across a moose before in that proximity and my brain just instantly thought, oh big deer, it will just run. They don't always take the fight response, but I'm sure someone else here can attest to the fact it is not an even remotely bright idea to test one's patience. Same area in Usk/Newport also has a huge population of bighorn sheep that they feed on a reserve and you can hike up and take pictures. They are mostly docile, but bighorn sheep does not equal to harmless little lamb. You have to be careful around those MFs. I think about this sometimes and am really grateful that it turned out like it did. I lived with my parents for a few months after college. I was 22 before starting a new job. My dad left one morning to go do something. I'm assuming going to check out garage sales. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, a man came to the door and said he needed to check if our pilot light was on. He came in what looked like a handyman van, and I didn't know much about the stuff. So I said sure. Our furnace was in the basement, but I figured I shouldn't leave him down there alone so that nothing went missing. Thankfully, my dad had recently adopted a dog and he stuck by my side. The guy was in and out pretty quickly. When I told my parents about it, they had no idea what I was talking about. It really set in several years later that there was a very good chance that guy had nothing to do with furnace maintenance and saw my dad leave. Who knows what would have happened if our dog hadn't been there. I consider myself to be fairly intelligent and I can't believe I allowed it to happen. This was a good 15 years ago. RIP Coley, thanks for watching out for me. Skitching. Holding onto the side of a car while standing on a skateboard like Marty McFly. At a certain speed, the skateboard truck would uncontrollably wobble and shoot out from under me. We were smart though and only did this in a parking lot. I live in rural Alaska, and when I met my BF, I quickly learned he loves ice fishing. We went to a lake, my first time, beginning of winter, to go ice fishing. I later learned that the lake we went to has a lot of hot spots, and people fall through the ice frequently, never to be found again. It's apparently one of the scariest and most dangerous lakes to ice fish on in the area. Had no idea, lol. I went to a friend's new bar opening by myself. I couldn't find anyone to go with me, so I was just going to stop in for a quick drink to see the place, then head home. I accepted a drink from someone I was acquainted with, but didn't know that well. He bought shots for a group of people he was with, and since I was standing there talking to them, he got me one as well. Something was in my shot, and I blacked out. I vaguely remember being in my car in the parking lot and this person trying to get into the passenger side, and apparently he did get in. From what I understand, we got as far as the car wash/gas station across the street and I screamed until he got out of the car. Someone found him passed out behind the car wash the next morning. I made it home, I don't know how, and was found by an ex who I drunk dialed at some point on my way home. I was passed out in my driveway, still sitting in the driver's seat with the car running and the car door open. I was afraid to go to the ER or hold the person accountable. While I didn't know the guy that well, it was common knowledge that he was a drug dealer in the area, and I was afraid of the repercussions. I've never accepted a drink from anyone or left a drink unattended in any situation since. More an near miss. Working in a shitty kitchen at about 20 years of age. I was carrying a 30-liter drum of oil in a cardboard box and positioned myself in front of the fryer and dropped the box down onto another upturned drum to refill the fryers. These were 30-liter fryer dumps each and currently were full of cooking fries. The oil drum just clipped both handles and landed safely. Had it have hit both handles full on, I can only imagine both fryer baskets flipping up and forward, covering me in 180-degree oil and hundreds of nice little burny potato sticks. I think about it still at 37. Mid-70s, Ted Bundy era, Salt Lake City. I hitchhiked occasionally at night. Got a lift from downtown to the suburbs in a white van. Halfway there is the turnoff to Park City and the driver says to me, "Now is where I usually take off up the canyon and have my way with you. You should be grateful that I have other things to do tonight." 15 minutes later he drops me off a bit away from my house and I go to open the door and you can't open the passenger door from the inside and you can't roll the window down. He gets out, opens the door for me, and tells me that I should probably be more cautious about who I get rides from. When I was about 14, My friend and I were in his backyard just messing around, and one of us discovered that when you touched the downspout of his gutter, it would cause our hands to contract, like we were being tased. Of course we thought this was cool as duck, and messed around with it for a little bit, seeing how it would work on our biceps, triceps, calves, etc. It was a great time, until we went inside, and told his dad what was going on. He went dead silent, immediately got out of his chair, and went directly outside. Turns out a power line had either gotten disconnected or drooped onto the house's gutter, and the power line was grounding through the downspout. Looking back, I had no idea why we didn't immediately meet God when we touched that downspout, but the thought still haunts me to this day. First time I moved out of my parents, I had never used a gas stove before, only electric. I thought you just turned on the gas and kept it on the entire time you cooked. I was standing happily stirring my porridge as the gas ticked away, assuming the smell was normal for those kind of stoves. My roommate came running down the stairs and shoved me out of the way to turn off the stove. I was confused at her sudden aggression until she explained how stupid I was. Now anytime I do something new that seems mundane, I Google it first. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.